Hey, good evening, family. How are you? I hope you had a wonderful Sunday. Happy Sunday to you. I hope you had a wonderful Father's Day. Please share with me if you did anything wonderful. I'm sure you did to celebrate Dad. I hope you did. Even if you just did something as simple as cook dinner and hung out, I hope you found a way to honor the man in your life that has been a father, whether biological or not. And I hope you had a wonderful week. We are officially entered into summer, so I am super, super excited because I know there's a lot of great summer plans everybody has, and with traveling and doing all these great things. And so, kudos to you. Kudos to all the parents out there of teens who graduated. Congratulations. Super proud. Just bestow all their flowers and really spoil them if they made it through. This is a wonderful time for them as they are officially entered young adulthood in that sense, where they are now thinking about college, the military, or whatever. Just encourage them in that, talk to them, find out where their heart is. And so I just wanted to say, welcome, welcome. I'm sorry for being late. There was a lot going on outside. And I was like, if I start now, everybody's going to hear this music. They're going to hear, um, what's going on. You might still be able to hear it, but I'm going to try to talk as loud as possible to kind of like to drown it out. This is the summertime, so this is what people are doing now. They're hanging out and everybody is taking it easy for the most part. And so I'm not going to complain about that. But my name is Antoinette Clay, and I am your host for Parenting After Dark. And today I'm going to talk about the science behind what teens are going through and what they're really feeling. And there is a word for it. So stay tuned to learn about the science. Well, hi, good evening. Thank you for joining me. I'm so glad that you decided to join me today. And I'm so glad that you decided to tune in and to really just listen in, to support, to get encouragement. This is a podcast that's strictly dedicated to the parents of teens and to give guidance and support and tips and encouragement and how to navigate this time period, with as few hiccups and with as less frustration and less being overwhelmed as possible, and to really enjoy it. Although it's a rough time and although it's a lot going on with teenagers, it's still a time where you can enjoy this process and enjoy, parenting your teen during this time and just, you know, discovering who they are becoming, you know. And that's really something that sometimes it can be a challenge because it's like they go back and forth, right? But I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I wanted to, in this uh, series or this, I want this to be like a part three of, what teens wish their parents knew. I wanted it to be like a part three, but it's going to conclude this particular topic. And there's a science behind what teens are going through. There's a scientific technical term. It's called individuation. And individuation is a natural process that happens and it must happen. It's necessary to happen. I'm going to talk about the process, why it's important, what's really going on, and just tell you what happens if that process doesn't happen, if it fails to happen, if that whole process just doesn't happen, what can actually happen. And so I want to just encourage you to open your heart to really hear what's going on, to really hear me on a level of understanding, because that's what I like to focus on, is helping people to understand the why. helping them to know the why, but also to understand the why. And so, individuation, I wrote some notes because I wanted to make sure not only am I, articulating correctly, but also that I give you the best information possible. And I want to make sure I mention things that are truly relevant to this particular topic. And so, I want to start off with just defining individuation. And it's the process through which young people begin to form. I'm sorry, I have to tell you, I was writing this so quickly and I was sort of scribbling. So now I'm like, what is this? So it's the process by which a young person begins to form a distinct identity separate from their parents and the family system as a whole. And so the idea is for them to differentiate their thoughts, values, emotions, and that whole process is it's for them to differentiate and to begin to come into their own understanding and what they believe or what they feel is true. And so I don't have to tell you that, when you bring up a child for 14, 15, 16 plus years, you there is an expectation on the parents' part that the child is going to follow in the footsteps and do the right thing and follow, what they know and what they've been taught. There is that understanding, but there's also the understanding that they may not agree with everything that they've been taught. And so this process is actually, again, I'm stating it again, and repetition is very important in terms of understanding, is that it has to happen and it is a natural process. Now, it's not the first time that this actually happens or this process actually goes into effect. We notice it when our children were younger, when we try to hold their hand crossing the street, right? They would pull their hand away and no, I can do it. Or you're trying to open, something for them, like some chips or something. They're like, no, I can do it. It's the same process. So while they were younger and they were in that process, it was appropriate because what they were essentially saying is, Ma, I can do it. I don't want you to do it. And as parents, we always get into that, well, I know better and you have to listen to me and so forth, but you got to let them do it. And with some things, yes, you if they wanted to open their own bag of chips or if they wanted to tie their sneaker by themselves, even though they may not have the physical dexterity or they may not really know how to loop the bunny and all like that, they still want to do it. And if they do it and it's a knot, great. Because they took the initiative and they understood that it has to be tied. Now, tied perfectly, beautifully is another thing, right? And so it's the same thing with adolescents and with teens. It's this process that they have to go through to form their own identity. Who do they believe that they are? Who do they think that they are, right? What are the values that they hold? And they want to keep it, they want to move away from the traditional family values. And so if the whole family, let's just say, is democratic, right? Then I might want to be liberal. I might want to be a conservative. I might want to be a Republican, or I might have Republican views, and I'm not really sure. And I have some liberal views and conservative views and progressive views, and but I know I for sure do not like Democratic views, right? And so it's that evaluation of what they've been taught, and now they're saying, no, I kind of differ. I don't really believe that, and I'm not really sure if that's really the best for me, and it's appropriate. And so I want to just talk a little bit about what this means for teens. They're exploring who they are, what they believe, and how they want to live. So again, just taking the values that they've been taught And now they're weighing it to themselves. Now they're saying, is that what I really believe in? I really want to do? Do I really want to go to school another 4 years and get an undergrad and then another 2+ years to get a master's? Do I really want to do that? Or do I just want to become a plumber and get my license and become a plumber or electrician, right? And so it's them just going through that process and evaluating, questioning family values and expectations. Like, if it's not a bad place and I'm just hanging with my friends, why do I have to come home at 10 o'clock? It's the summer now, everybody's outside. Why do I have to come upstairs, right? We're not doing anything. We are, just hanging out. I'm not at a party. I'm not drinking. I'm not doing drugs. I'm not doing anything wrong. Why can't I just hang out until 12, 1 o'clock, right? They're exploring with new rules, with and new interests and roles. Excuse me, not rules, but roles. Exploring new roles and interest, and they might become a part of different groups at school. After school groups where they are now becoming more environmentally aware and not, doing what they would normally do, but like now they may be, really involved in recycling and or cruelty to animals and making sure animals are being safe. So they might find themselves volunteering, to do different things after school, involving, animal adoption and things like that. They're developing independent thinking, asserting their autonomy while still needing emotional support. That's a big one. I talked about that a few weeks ago. Like, it's that tug of war. Like, treat me like a young adult. Treat me, know that I know what I'm doing. But then they may find themselves curled up on your lap and needing for you to comfort them and to reassure them. And that's part of that process. It's that tug of war. Like, I don't need you. I'm good. And then can you hold me and, make it feel better? Can you make me feel better? I'm really struggling. I found out one of my friends betrayed me and, lied behind my back. And I'm really, having a tough time with it because we had so much in common. I don't understand why that would happen. And so you have that tug of war going back and forth. And again, all a part of that process, right? And so what's the role of the family during this time? This is a very, again, interesting time, but what's the role of the family? So parents may feel a sense of loss, right? The little one that you saw grow up and become this young person is not that same little one that you were e- it was so easy to appease when they were younger by doing little things. Now that's not the same person. You have a new person on your hand. And so it's more like, am I losing my child? Is this group or whatever that they're part of, is it too radical? Do they really, believe some of this stuff that's going on out here in this culture with hooking up and all the things that people are doing now to, with this sexual type of liberation and this, feminism and all these things that are really pulling at people. Like, what are their thoughts? What are their views? And you can feel like I feel like I'm losing my child. I don't know who they are. They're not listening to the kind of music I thought. And it's all these things that parents feel. And so we have to balance that. And that's what's really important as parents. Our job is to really to help bring balance and to bring consistency and calmness to the situation, because they don't even know, and they're going back and forth with a lot of things. So, again, don't take it personal. And I say that, and I want to encourage you in that. Don't take it personal. Teens feel a lot of confusion and guilt about becoming more independent, because it's like, I don't want grandma and TT and Tio and uncle and my cousins, and I don't want them to think I'm, doing something crazy, but I'm just not feeling like, this is what I want to do. Like, I love my family, but I don't agree with everything that they do. I don't agree with how they think or believe, right? I don't agree with, the stance that they have about faith and about relationship with God, or I don't believe, that it's wrong to do this or that like they told me. I think it's okay. And so there's a lot of guilt and confusion that comes with that with adolescents because they don't want to disappoint their family. They don't want to be rejected. They don't want to seem like the oddball out, but they just have different views and it's okay. And as parents, you have to encourage that. We have to encourage them to explore, right? You keep your eye on them, but you want to encourage them to really explore and then have them explain to you. And I said this before and I'll say it again, have them to explain to you why. What made you believe this, or how did you come about with this understanding? And this is going to help promote that good communication piece. It's going to help them to begin to analyze and that critical thinking and reasoning that they need in order to, again, emerge into adulthood successfully. The communication during this time can become strained. Again, it's the back and forth. It's you knowing how to keep that balance and respect them as an individual and as a young adult and their ideas and their opinions, and not, pushing past that or disregarding it, right? And it's also them respecting you as a parent and the boundaries you set. And, I don't want to, make it seem like I'm just saying let your kid do whatever, because I'm not, because that's not practical. What I'm saying is that to allow them this time to go through this process. This is the scientific, technical term for this, wanting this autonomy and independence. It's called individuation. Again, we see it when they're younger and they're 2 and 3 and they don't want to hold our hands crossing the street. They want to open their own chips. They want to tie their own shoe. Well, it's the same thing now with adolescents. Now it's, I want to hang out a little bit later. It's the summertime. I passed all my grades and I passed and I have an A average and I'm working part time. And so I have my own money. Why can't I stay out to 11 or 12 o'clock? It's summertime, everybody's outside. And so it's that push. It's that push for more independence, that push for more respect, that push for more, autonomy in a lot of areas. And you know what? I don't know what I want to do. I might decide to go to the military. I really want to travel, and I heard that that's the best way to do it because I can go to all these countries, I get all the specialized training, and so they're trying to sell you an idea about something, and you're like, can you rethink about that? And so again, you want them to go through the process, and you want to encourage them in that process. Now, why does individuation matters? Because it helps them to build a strong self-concept and self-esteem. I cannot tell you how many people I have met over the years, adults, grandparents, you name it, from different nationalities, different races, ethnicities, and they have such a poor self image and they don't feel good about themselves, and how that translates into work ethics, how it translates into relationships, and how that translates into being successful in life. And so you want them to go through this process and you want them to go through it so that they can come out feeling stronger and better about themselves and having a better self-esteem and self-concept, ability to make independent decisions. You want them to be able to do that. You want them to be able to make decisions should something happen and they have to take care of you. You want to know that they can take care of you, right? That they can make decisions and figure out, okay, what I need to do to make sure that mom or dad's estate is settled and okay, and and manage it, and you know, and if something should happen and they transition, how do I handle that? How do I take care of that? How do I go about that? How do I go about, living on my own and paying my own bills, right? And again, one of those things, not living on a budget. I know for myself, when I became a single mom, I did not live on a budget. I knew that you should budget and you should have one, but I didn't live on one because I was so busy like surviving, right? Until I didn't think about a budget because it just was like it just for me it was like it didn't really make sense. I didn't have any debt, and so as long as my monthly expenses were taken care of, I didn't really even think about it until later on. And I was like, wow, I should have started planning for college for her, or should something happen, I should have an emergency fund. So as I had gotten older and was getting older, certain things became apparent. And I was like, you know what? I need to start doing some things differently now, you know? But just being overwhelmed as a single parent, I was finding myself eating out a lot because I didn't feel like cooking and I wanted to just come home and relax. And some days when I took her to the park and things like that, I came home, it was like, let's do your homework. Let's, if it wasn't done during after school, let's do that. And then, let's have some dinner and sort of relax with a movie, right? And so these are things that sometimes when during adult years that you don't always make the best choices. So it starts in the teen years with really, having that understanding of how to make decisions and how to do the things that needs to be done so that you can be successful. So you want to encourage that decision making in them, letting them maybe possibly, and I'm just making a suggestion, letting them set the terms for certain things. Like, if they do go to a party, what kind of plan do you have if things go wrong? If they want to take a trip now that they're seniors and they've graduated, and let's say they want to take a trip with some of their friends overseas, what does that look like? Let them talk you through that process and show you, okay, this is what we're planning to do. This is our itinerary. This is how we're doing it, blah, blah, blah. Let them, give you all the information and then you talk about it and you discuss it. And, hopefully they follow through with that. And when I say hopefully, because, they can change again, it's that back and forth. Well, you know what? We decided once we got there that we were going to go to this particular part or this particular area. So, we couldn't do X, Y, and Z. And so you want to encourage that in them to make these independent decisions, critical thinking and abstract reasoning. You want to encourage that to think critically, to know, how to, think about things and weigh the pros and cons. You want to have you this is important for them, to have healthy adult relationships. If they go through this process and they go through it very easy and they go through it not even easy, I'll take that back. If they go through it and they navigate through it successfully, it will help them to have better healthy adult relationships. And then overall, their long term psychological well being. When they go through this process successfully, they're going to think better and they're going to have their attitudes and their behavior is going to be better as well. And so you definitely want that. And then the last thing I want to mention is what happens if a team doesn't individuate, if they fail to go through this process. A couple of things happened and I wanted to just talk about. Um, One is um, difficulty navigating adult responsibilities. Now, there's something called the Peter Pan syndrome, and I don't want to get too technical, but it's really the idea that an adult who should be, adulting is not adulting. They are very much still in that mode of being a kid. So, The idea is that they don't assume adult responsibilities at all. They are not working. They may have little to no skills, or maybe they do have skills, or maybe they did have a job and they lost it. But the idea is that they have a child, or a child's mind, a teen's or adolescent mind. They never grow up. They never assume the responsibility. And in my opinion, if a teen fails to go through this process of individuation, they will become Peter Pan syndrome adults who did just never grow up. They're 40 years old, they're still living in the basement or on the couch. They're not doing anything with their life but playing video games and having fun and hanging out and doing all these things irresponsibly because they haven't successfully navigated this process, this typical process, right? And so you don't want that. You want your children to thrive and become successful adults. You want them to have healthy relationships. You want them to, do all the things that, they've ever wanted to do career wise. If they want families and all like that, you want them to be good at it and you want them to have the best life. And so I encourage you that, again, you want to encourage your team to do that because you don't want this for them to experience this difficulty. You don't want this dependency on you at 40, 35, 40 years old, and they're not assuming responsibility. You're still doing their laundry, you're still cooking, you're still cleaning up behind them because they have just, they're just like in this whole like, okay, I'll do it, but never do it. Or they're in this mindset of, it's okay, I'll get to it eventually, or, I'm having fun right now, so it really doesn't matter. And, I haven't figured out what I wanted to do with my life. So, don't rush me type of thing. You don't want that. You really want to steer clear of that. And so you want to help them go through this process. You want to help them to navigate this process, right? You want them to do it successfully because if they don't, this is something that they can experience, this continued dependency and just not assuming the responsibilities at all of any adults. In some cases there have been people who have had children and still are in this very dependent state with their parents, and the children come over and they see the grandparents, but the parent is like not taking care of their responsibilities. There's now a tug of war with the co-parent situation, and it's like, you got kids, what are you doing? And it still hasn't registered to them that they're missing it and that they are not assuming the appropriate responsibilities. And so you want them to go through this process, you want them to be successful at it. And I just want to encourage you that, um again, be patient, but allow them to make these decisions. Allow them to really step up and take the responsibility. I do want to say this about, late bloomers specifically. If you have a late bloomer, a child who's a late bloomer developmentally, that process or this process of individuation is going to likely begin or continue, you know, well into the late adolescence period, which is full adolescence is the age of 25. So that late adolescence is 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, up in there. And so with late bloomers, they may just start going through that around that age group where they are really testing those boundaries and expressing more independence and wanting more autonomy and doing more decision making and, values clarification. They're going through that a little later on. And so you want to give time for that. And you want to give them time for that because late bloomers are just late bloomers. They don't do everything, you know, where most average people do stuff. They do things a little later. So that chronological age, is there, but emotionally they're like 15, 14, 16 maybe. You want to give them that time for that maturation to catch up. And you want to be supportive. And again, just be encouraged. As time go on, they will eventually get it together, and they will eventually, be able to make decisions and live their lives and, become adults, and be the best adults, the version of adulthood that they can be. Right. And I want to also just encourage you as single parents. I know for me, it was hard because, going through all of these changes with her and then having to navigate my own life. And on top of that, the total responsibility of the household being on me was really hard. And I am thankful because I was dating at the time. And so the gentleman I was dating was also a father, so it helped because he had daughters. And so it made it a little easier because he was able to give me some tips and some advice and to really encourage me, and I was so appreciative of that. But it can be really even more hard as a single parent to parent, let alone parent teens. And so it takes a lot of prayer. It takes a lot of depending on God and asking God to show you what to do and how to do it and how to navigate. And again, just operating in that, discernment about yourself and knowing, that you are taking care of yourself. And in addition to, helping your team to navigate, because when it's just you, it's totally different. It's not like the teen can go and stay with the other parent, right? Sometimes no, it's when you are totally and it's full on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you got to navigate this thing. You got to keep your sanity and your wit about you while being understanding and showing love and you know being supportive of them and making sure that they understand that you got them and that you're there for them. And even when you feel like, you're like, oh my God, this is just too much, between this and teachers calling and, and their behavior, it's like it can become a lot. And when you don't have that backup or that support system, it really can be a lot. So I want to encourage you as a single parent, you need to get some kind of support system, somebody who can help you, who can, be that other shoulder, not just for you, but making sure your teen has support. So it may mean connecting with some of their favorite teachers in school to kind of help out, just building that village and being wise about building that village and just know that you're going to get through this. Trust me, you are going to get through this. And you're going to look back on this. And when you're going through stuff, it don't ever look like it's going to get better. But once you're out of it and you're past it, then sometimes you can say, it wasn't that bad, but I wouldn't want to do it again. Right. So I hope this was all helpful for you. Thank you for joining. I'll see you next week right here live at 8 p.m. at Parenting After Dark right here on YouTube. Have a great week.